I'm Melissa Garner, 28 years old, and last Sunday afternoon, I let myself into my parents' house to drop off a set of RSVP cards. I wasn't supposed to hear anything, just a quick stop before heading home. But as I walked past Dad's study, I caught my name, and something in Mom's voice made me pause. She said, "We'll make her pay for everything like it was nothing like it was right." That sentence froze me in place, and what came next unraveled everything I thought I knew about my family. Before I go any further, let me know where you're listening from in the comments and hit that like and subscribe button. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own home, I grew up in a quiet neighborhood just outside Salem, Oregon, where every house looked like the one next to it. My dad worked long hours at the bank, and my mom gave piano lessons from our living room. Trevor and I were 4 years apart, but as kids, we were inseparable. We shared bunk beds until I was 10, and he always let me have the top he built, the ladder to our treehouse with Dad in one summer, and I remember thinking, nothing could ever come between us. Our house wasn't fancy, but it always smelled like coffee and lemon furniture polish, the kind of place where the good china stayed in the cabinet. Unless someone graduated, Trevor was always the star student. Every report card had straight A's, and every science fair ended with a ribbon around his project. Mom would beam at him from the front row, while Dad shook hands with the principal, like it was his win, too. I was different, not worse, just different. I wrote stories that made my teachers cry and sketched portraits of classmates that looked more like them than their school photos. But at home, my talents were seen as hobbies, not future paths. Mom once said art was nice, but wouldn't put food on the table, and Dad only praised my efforts when they looked more like Trevor's. I joined debate club and took a bio, but it never seemed enough when Trevor got into Stanford. They threw a backyard party with relatives flying in from Colorado and Texas. I got into Oregon State, and we went to Olive Garden. Teaching is practical, Mom said that night, stirring her iced tea. And that was that. I became a third-grade teacher at Pine Hollow Elementary. 20 minutes from where we grew up, Trevor moved to Seattle to join a startup building payment software he called Once a Week, and still remembered my students by name. The company exploded after a big retail contract, and by 32, he had stock options that made him a millionaire overnight. He bought a penthouse downtown and surprised our parents with a trip to Alaska for their anniversary. The same year I started picking up tutoring gigs to afford school supplies for my class. I didn't resent him. I was proud. But every time Mom opened a gift from him, her face lit up in a way that made my handmade presents feel like leftovers. I still remember a Labor Day barbecue 5 years ago. Uncle Ray asked how we were doing. Dad launched into Trevor's promotion and new condo. But when it was my turn, Mom cut in with another story about Trevor's latest award that night. I drove home in silence. It was the first time I let myself wonder if they'd ever see me as more than just fine. But nothing prepared me for what I heard in that study the night of Trevor and Sophia's engagement party. The Kingsley Hotel was dressed in gold light and crystal. The ceilings stretched up like a cathedral, and every voice in the lobby echoed just slightly as I walked in. My navy dress had taken 2 weeks of tutoring to afford. I'd curled my hair myself and worn the pearl studs Mom gave me when I graduated college. But standing near the bar, I still felt like someone who'd wandered into the wrong event. Guests floated between tables like they belonged there, like they knew exactly which fork to use. And when servers in black carried trays of hors d'oeuvres I couldn't pronounce, Trevor found me near the chocolate fountain. He smiled the same way he used to after. "Winning a board game. There's my favorite sister," he said. "I'm your only sister," I said back. His arm looped around my shoulder like it always had when we were kids. He told me he and Sophia both wanted me to be maid of honor. I looked over at Sophia. She was laughing with her friends, all of them wearing dresses that shimmered under the chandelier light. "Are you sure?" I asked. "She doesn't have a sister or anyone else. She has bridesmaids," he said. "But we both agreed this role should be yours." I said yes, I meant it. I didn't know yet what it would cost. 2 weeks later, Sophia held our first planning meeting in a private room at a downtown restaurant, the kind with soft music and menus, without prices. My parents arrived in the Lexus Trevor had bought for Mom's birthday. Sophia's parents were already there, Dr. and Mrs. Patterson with calm voices, and the kind of jewelry that never caught the light. Too loudly, Sophia opened a leather folder filled with fabric swatches and printed photos. "We've reserved a venue in Santorini." she said. "It holds 200 guests." The planner, Vivian, flipped through a digital tablet. "We're looking at a total around 200,000, she said, like she was describing a lunch order, not 4 years of my salary. Sophia slid a photo across the table. "These are the bridesmaid dresses," she said. "They're from Marquesa." The price tag sat quietly beneath the lace detail. $1,500, and that was just the dress we're covering. "Half," she added. "As our gift to you girls." My throat tightened even before the bachelorette trip was mentioned. "We'll be in Barcelona for 3 nights, said the maid of honor. "We found a villa. Every word added up in my head. Dresses, makeup, airfare, a hotel room that started at $350 a night. The math didn't lie. I was drowning. Mom must have seen the color drain from my face. "Melissa," she said, "you okay?" "Just a lot of details," I said. After dessert, I asked Trevor to step outside. "This all sounds amazing," I said, "but I need to be honest about the cost. It's more than I can handle." His face shifted. He looked like he hadn't thought about it before. "Let me cover it," he said. "All of it." "No," I said. "I just need to know the numbers so I can plan. I don't want to be a burden or feel like a charity case." "I'll talk to Sophia. He said we can figure something out." But when he brought it up, she shut it down. "We've already committed to Marquesa," she said. "This is our day. We've dreamed of these things." My parents sat in silence. Not one word to back me up that night. I sat at home with Jasmine. "I'll need $8,000 just to be in this wedding," I said. "That's my entire emergency fund, and then some. Ask your parents," she said. "They're clearly invested in this wedding. They've already decided it's my problem to solve," I said. So I started picking up more tutoring jobs, gave up my summer break, signed up to teach summer school, canceled my dentist appointment, and stopped fixing the dent in my car. Every dollar went into an envelope in my drawer labeled wedding. Then came the bridal shower contribution, $500, the deposit for the villa in Barcelona, $1,200, and the plane ticket to Greece, non-refundable. Of course, 6 months in, I met with the travel agent who cheerfully told me the room block required 3 nights at $350 a night, plus group dinners, excursions, farewell, brunch on the way to my car. I called Ryan. "I can't do this." I said, "It's ruining me," he said. Maybe it was time to be honest. So the next Sunday, I drove to my parents' house to drop off my RSVP cards, the ones Mom said were due, even though the deadline was a week away. Nobody answered the door, so I let myself in. Their flower beds looked perfect. The house smelled like cinnamon. I walked toward Dad's study. I was about to knock when I heard my name. "Melissa's been hinting about the wedding costs," Dad said. "But you need to stand firm. We'll make her pay for everything. Mom said it's good for her character." Trevor sounded uncertain. "I could help her." "It's not a big deal. Absolutely not," Dad said. "She chose to be a teacher. She made her bed. She can lie in it." Trevor brought up the college fund we redirected that Mom said to your grad school to your first investment opportunity. "We knew you'd make something of it," Trevor asked if I knew. "She doesn't." "Mom said she thinks the money was lost in the market." I backed away quietly. Left without saying a word in my car, I sat for a long time before driving off. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Did you drop off the RSVP cards yet?" I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. I couldn't believe they were still pretending I didn't go to work the next day. I called in sick and stayed in bed with the curtains drawn. My phone buzzed all morning. Voicemails from Mom, texts from Trevor, missed calls from both. I didn't answer any of them. Jasmine brought soup that evening and sat with me while I tried to explain what I'd heard in the study. She listened quietly, her eyes steady. "That's not what love sounds like," she said after a long pause. I didn't reply. I just nodded. The next day was no better. I didn't shower. I didn't eat. Jasmine checked on me again before heading to work and left a note on the kitchen counter. "You are not crazy. You were never the problem." By the 3rd day, Ryan stopped by after school. He sat on the edge of my bed and told me it was okay to fall apart, but that at some point I'd need to stand up again. "You didn't deserve any of this," he said, "but you also don't have to carry it alone." On the 5th day, I finally opened my laptop and emailed the school. I'd be back Monday. My students would be halfway through their fractions unit, and the thought of Lily or Jaden falling behind pulled me forward more than anything else could. That weekend, I still hadn't spoken to my parents. Trevor sent one more message. Please, just tell me if you're okay, I replied with 2 words. Need space. The house was quiet. Jasmine had gone to visit her sister for the weekend. I made tea and sat at the table staring at the same kitchen chairs we'd had since college. I thought about birthdays when Dad gave Trevor a telescope and me a sweater. I thought about the time Mom forgot to pick me up from a school play because Trevor had a robotics meeting. Every memory came back with a question attached. Was that trip for both of us or just for him? Did they come to my events because they wanted to or because they felt they had to? By Sunday, I sent a group text to Trevor. Mom and Dad, dinner tomorrow, 7 p.m. My treat. Need to talk. I chose a small restaurant near the park. Not too fancy, not too casual. I got there early and picked a booth in the back. They arrived together, Trevor holding the door open for Mom, who looked nervous but tried to smile. Dad gave a stiff nod. We've been so worried, Mom said as she sat down. You've lost weight. I didn't answer. What's this about? Dad asked. Your text was vague. Trevor looked at me across the table, waiting. Let's order first, I said. It'll be easier once the food's here. We made small talk about the weather, the traffic, the wedding. Mom talked about centerpieces and welcome bags. Like everything was fine when the entrees arrived. I put down my fork last Sunday, I said. I came by to drop off the RSVP cards. No one answered, so I let myself in. Mom frowned. We never got them because I overheard you in Dad's study. I said I heard everything. The color drained from her face. Dad set his utensils down. Melissa, he began. Context is important. What context makes it okay to lie about my college fund? I asked. What justifies setting aside $50,000 for a wedding while watching me go into debt to attend it? Mom straightened in her seat. We never promised to pay for the wedding. I'm not talking about the wedding, I said. I'm talking about everything leading up to it. The years of telling me there was nothing left for school. The years of pretending it was fair. Dad cleared his throat. Financial decisions aren't about fairness. They're about return on investment. The silence after that was heavy. So Trevor was the better investment, I asked. And I was, what a bad bet. That's not what we meant, Mom said quickly. Then say what you meant, I said. Because what I heard in that study wasn't love. It was a strategy. Trevor spoke then for the first time since the entrees arrived. They did promise to help you. I remember those conversations too. Mom looked at him sharply. You told me the market crashed, I said. But the money went to grad school and startup funds for Trevor. Dad folded his napkins slowly. We were trying to teach you independence. Trevor needed help at the time. You didn't, I shook my head. You don't get to decide who needs help. You chose who deserved it. That's a dramatic interpretation, Mom said. I've worked extra jobs, canceled health appointments, drained every dollar I had just to be part of this wedding, I said. And not once did either of you ask how I was managing. No one forced you. Dad said, you could have bowed out. I looked at him for a long moment. Do you hear yourself? I asked. You're telling your daughter to sit out her only brother's wedding because she can't afford the luxury version. Trevor reached for my hand across the table. Mel, I'll take care of everything from now on. Please let me fix this. I pulled back gently. This isn't about the money anymore. Then what is it? Mom asked. It's about finding out that I was never worth the same effort, I said. And realizing I can't keep pretending, the table went quiet again. I won't be attending the wedding, I said finally. I can't stand up there knowing what I know now. Don't be ridiculous, Mom said. Do you know how that'll look? You're worried about appearances, I asked. Not the fact that your daughter just said she's been hurt for years. I stood slowly, dinner's covered. You're free to enjoy it. I need space from this family until I know if anything can be salvaged. Trevor stood halfway. Please don't walk out like this. Not tonight, I said. I've said what needed saying. It's up to you. What happens next? I left without looking back. I didn't hear from my parents after that dinner. Not a call, not a message, not even an email. Trevor sent one message with a subject line that read, "Please read when you're ready." But I left it sitting unopened in my inbox for days. Jasmine came home to find me reorganizing the spice rack and wiping down the baseboards, so she said gently, "Are we coping or cleaning both?" I said, "Maybe neither at night." I lay awake staring at the ceiling fan. The silence from my family wasn't a surprise, but it still echoed through the quiet moments. It wasn't just about what they said that day. It was everything before it, everything. I had convinced myself was normal. Ryan stayed close. He brought dinner when I forgot to cook and walked with me in the evenings. Some parents see their kids as a reflection of themselves, he said one night as we walked along the riverfront. They invest more in the child who validates their image. I didn't answer, but the words stayed with me. A week later, I sat across from a therapist named Diana. She had soft eyes and a steady voice. "What you're describing sounds like a golden child dynamic." She said she explained how in some families, one child becomes the symbol of pride, while the other learns to earn love through overachievement or silence. It wasn't always intentional, but it left marks that didn't fade easily. But why, I asked? Why would parents divide their children that way? Sometimes it's about their own fears or values, she said. Success becomes a shield against insecurity, so they pour into the child who fits their definition of success. I went back every week. Diana helped me trace the patterns I hadn't seen before, how Dad's praise always came with conditions, how Mom's attention tilted toward Trevor. Even when I tried my hardest to catch it, she asked what I wanted. Moving forward boundaries. I said after a long pause, I need to stop shrinking myself just to keep the peace around. The same time I reconnected with Amanda. She'd been my best friend in middle school. We lost touch after college, but she reached out after seeing a photo from the engagement party online. We met for coffee at her place. Her kitchen smelled like cinnamon and fresh paint. After I shared what had happened, she didn't look surprised. "Honestly, Mel," she said, "I'm not shocked. I saw it even back in high school." "What do you mean your art show sophomore year?" she said. "Your watercolor won first place and your parents barely noticed. They were too busy talking about Trevor's science award. You remember that everyone did?" She said gently. "Our moms were in the same book club. Mine used to say, she felt bad for you that your wins never seemed to count." I didn't know what to say. The truth was, I'd been telling myself for years that things weren't as bad as they felt. Hearing someone else confirm it cracked something open that night. I sat at the kitchen table writing on a yellow notepad, listing everything I'd done to be part of that wedding. Every dollar spent, every hour worked, every vacation canceled. By the time I reached the bottom of the page, I wasn't sure what hurt more, the sacrifices or the silence that followed them. 3 weeks after the dinner, Trevor showed up at my apartment. I wasn't expecting him. I opened the door, still wearing old sweats and holding a bowl of cereal. "Can I come in?" he asked. We sat in the living room with a throw blanket between us, the cushions sunken from too many late-night conversations with Jasmine. "I've been trying to give you space," he said, "but I can't let it end like this." "I didn't say anything first," he said. "I didn't know about the college fund. I really thought they helped us both." I nodded. "And second," he said, "I'm sorry. I should have seen the pattern. I should have asked why things were always easier for me and harder for you. You didn't make those choices." I said they did, but I benefited from them, he said, and I didn't question it. We talked for hours. We went back through childhood, birthdays, school events, holidays that suddenly looked different in hindsight. He told me about the pressure he felt too, the constant need to achieve the quiet threat of disappointment. If he ever slowed down, you broke free from it, he said. You chose your own path. I'm just now realizing how much of mine was built for their approval. He paused. Then, "I know you said you're not coming to the wedding," he said, "and I'd understand if you stuck with that, but it would mean a lot if you were there, not for them." "For me, I can't face them," I said. "Not like this. I'll talk to them," he said. "Make sure they give you space. You can bring Ryan and stay as separate as you need to be." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I've already arranged to cover all your costs. Not as a loan or charity, just as your brother." I didn't answer right away if I go. I said, "I need to do it with conditions first. I'll accept the help, but only because I can't afford to go otherwise. Second, I need to keep my distance from Mom and Dad. Third, Ryan comes with me everywhere." "Done," he said. No questions asked. Before he left, I handed him a sealed envelope. "It's a letter," I said. "For Mom and Dad. I'm not ready to speak to them, but they need to know where I stand." He tucked it into his jacket and promised to deliver it the next week. He told me they read it. "They're not happy," he said, "but they're listening." Mom sent a short text. "We miss you at Sunday dinner. Let's talk when you're ready." Dad left a voicemail. Maybe we could have handled things differently. "Let's sit down after the wedding." They weren't apologies, not yet, but they were steps. And for now, steps were enough. When the plane touched down in Santorini, the sky outside the window was a color I didn't know how to name. It wasn't blue exactly. It was softer, something between silver and seafoam. Ryan reached across the aisle and gave my hand a quick squeeze. Neither of us said much. We didn't need to. Trevor had kept his word. Every detail covered flights, hotel transfers, even the alterations on the dress. The resort was perched along the cliffs, the white buildings glowing in the afternoon light. Everything about it felt unreal. Sophia's bridesmaids were already there. They worked in finance law and pharmaceuticals, all confident, all polite. They kept their distance at first, but over the next 2 days I noticed quiet efforts to include me. Maybe Sophia had spoken to them, or maybe they sensed the tension without needing the full story. Our parents arrived the following morning. I saw them from the terrace near the lobby. Mom was wearing a linen blouse with gold buttons. Dad had on his golf visor. I stepped back before they saw me. Trevor had arranged our rooms on opposite sides of the resort, and for now that distance made things easier. The rehearsal dinner was held under strings of lights in the garden near the lower courtyard. The speeches were short. The food came in courses I couldn't pronounce, and Ryan stayed close to my side. Mom and Dad were there, but didn't approach me. They made eye contact once or twice, then turned away. I had asked for distance, and they were giving it on the morning of the wedding. Trevor knocked on my door. He wore shorts and a t-shirt and looked younger than usual, like the version of him I used to know. "Can we talk?" he asked. We walked along the cliffside path that circled behind the resort. The ocean stretched out wide and quiet below. "I wanted to thank you for being here," he said. "I know it wasn't easy." I nodded, but didn't speak yet. "I've been thinking a lot lately," he continued, "about fairness, about how easy it is to mistake advantage for effort." I looked at him. "I got so much from them," he said, "and I didn't realize how little you were getting in return." He handed me an envelope. I opened a new account. He said, "It's in your name. It's not a favor or a loan, it's restitution." Inside was a bank statement showing $70,000. I blinked at the number. "It's what should have been yours for school," he said. "They gave it to me instead. I didn't know back then, but now that I do, I want to return it." I tried to speak, but nothing came out. "Use it however you need," he said. "Loans, house savings, it doesn't matter. I just want you to have a clean slate." I nodded slowly, folding the paper back into the envelope we hugged. Then, not like the old times, but something new. A beginning built on truth, not performance. The ceremony itself was stunning. White chairs lined the edge of the cliff flowers. Everywhere a string quartet played as Sophia walked down the aisle in a dress that caught the wind. Just slightly, I stood beside her as maid of honor, watching Trevor's face as she reached him, watching the way the ocean framed the whole moment like it had waited for them during the reception. I kept my distance from our parents. Mom glanced over a few times, her expression hard to read. Not cold, not angry, just unreadable. Dad approached once near the dessert table. "Your brother looks happy," he said, holding a glass of champagne. "He does," I said. He looked like he wanted to say more, but didn't. "Maybe we can talk once we're home," he said finally, "just the two of us, maybe." I said the rest of the evening passed in a blur, dancing toasts, flashes from the photographer clicking every few minutes. Ryan and I slipped away early. Walking back to our villa under the stars, I felt tired but lighter. Somehow like something had loosened in my chest. We still had 3 more days before the flight home, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about what came next. I was just there watching the water move below the cliffs, holding Ryan's hand, listening to the night back in Oregon. The rhythm of everyday life came back faster than I expected. The classroom welcomed me like it always had. Sharp pencils, clean whiteboards, a new seating chart for the spring term. The envelope Trevor gave me sat tucked in my desk drawer at home for 3 days before I finally opened it again. This time I logged into the account to make sure it was real. $70,000. I used it to pay off every cent of my student loans and set the rest aside for a future I hadn't thought possible before the first paycheck after the loans were gone felt like a revelation. I picked up groceries without checking the total. I scheduled that long overdue dental appointment. I even booked a weekend cabin trip for Ryan's birthday. 3 months passed before I agreed to meet my parents again. They chose a neutral restaurant halfway between their house and mine, the kind with soft music and booths by the window. We ordered lunch and sat in an awkward silence until the food arrived. Dad spoke first. "I've been thinking about what you said," he said, "and about what we didn't say back." I waited. "We thought we were making smart decisions at the time, practical ones," he said. "But looking back, I can see how that might have sent the wrong message." Mom sat quiet, then added, "We never meant for you to feel less." I nodded but didn't answer right away. "I did feel less," I said finally. For a long time, Mom reached across the table and touched my hand. "We're trying to understand now it wasn't an apology, not exactly, but it was the first time they said anything close to regret." Over the next year, we rebuilt slowly. I didn't go back to Sunday dinners right away, and when I did, I made it clear I'd leave early if the conversation tilted too far in one direction. Sometimes I stayed the full hour, sometimes I didn't. Trevor and Sophia started hosting gatherings at their house once a month. Nothing big, just dinner and board games or brunch on the patio. Their effort to make space for everyone when they announced the pregnancy, 6 months after the wedding, they invited me and Ryan over. First, they handed me a little box with a pacifier inside. "We're hoping you'll be part of their life from the very start," Trevor said. Sophia smiled and added, "We want them to grow up knowing every kind of strength, not just the kind that comes with titles or money." The baby wasn't due until the fall, but they asked if I'd come with them to the ultrasound appointment, the first one where you could hear the heartbeat. I said yes. One afternoon in early May, I got a phone call from Mom. "I was wondering," she said, "could I visit your classroom?" "My classroom? I know I've never seen it," she said. "But I'd really like to understand that part of your world." She came the following Tuesday during reading group time, 23 third graders working on nonfiction summaries and guided questions. I handed her a visitor badge, and she sat quietly in the back of the room. I saw her watching as I moved between desks, helped Lily with her vocabulary. Chart reminded Jaden to slow down when reading aloud. After the final bell, she stood at the front of the room and looked around at the walls covered in student art and handwritten goals. "You're remarkable with them," she said softly. I didn't answer. We stood there for another minute as the sound of lockers slamming echoed down the hallway. "I don't think I ever really saw it," she said. "Not like this." As we walked to the parking lot, a student named Daniel tugged at my sleeve. "Miss Garner." He said my parents helped my sister with her homework first, every time I crouched beside him. "Have you told them how that makes you feel?" He shook his head. "Would you like to?" I asked. "We can practice it together first." He nodded slowly. "After school," I called his parents. We scheduled a meeting for Friday just to talk later that night as I filled out progress reports at the kitchen table. I thought about how familiar Daniel's voice had sounded, how much it reminded me of my own at that age. Helping him put his feelings into words gave shape to something I hadn't named before. That maybe healing isn't only about what you recover for yourself. Maybe it's also about what you're able to pass forward. 3 weeks before Sophia's due date, I stopped by Trevor's house to drop off a baby shower gift they'd already received most of what they needed. But I brought a hand-knit blanket in soft green and cream. Sophia answered the door with one hand on her belly and a tired smile. "Come in," she said. "He just started the dishwasher, but we're both here." We sat in the kitchen while she poured tea. She asked about my students. Asked if I'd been writing lately. She didn't push, but I could tell she was making space. Trevor came in drying his hands. "She's been rearranging the nursery every other day," he said. "I just stay out of the way now. It's almost ready," Sophia said. Before I left, Sophia walked me to the door. "Thank you for everything," she said, "for coming to the wedding and for sticking with us through all of it." I meant what I said. I told her I'm here for the baby, not the past. The baby came early, 2 days before the shower. It was a boy. They named him Simon. I waited until the third day to visit. They were still in the hospital. Trevor met me at the elevators and walked me to the room. Mom was sitting beside the bassinet, leaning close as if memorizing Simon's face. She looked up when I entered and stood slowly. "You came," she said. "He's beautiful," I said. Mom reached for my hand and didn't let go. "I'd like to try again," she said. "If you're open to that." I nodded but didn't speak. Dad was there too near the window, holding a small blue beanie in one hand. He didn't say anything, but nodded toward me. A quiet gesture that said more than usual. I held Simon for the first time that afternoon. His fingers were curled into tiny fists. His eyes closed tight. Later that month, Trevor and Sophia invited everyone for Sunday lunch at their house. Nothing fancy, just sandwiches and salad on the deck. The conversation moved slowly but fairly. Trevor made sure to ask about my classroom, about the after-school program I'd helped design. Sophia asked about Ryan's soccer league when Mom started to steer the conversation toward a new business deal Trevor had signed. Sophia changed the subject to the color of Simon's nursery. It was subtle, but I noticed after lunch I stayed to help clear the table. Mom followed me into the kitchen, drying plates as I rinsed. "I know this doesn't fix everything," she said, "but I'm trying to learn how to listen better." I handed her a plate without looking up. "I noticed the effort," I said, "and that matters. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was the first time it didn't feel like performance." By fall, I was back in full swing with school. My third graders had grown into their routines. We were working on personal narratives and trying to master punctuation. One morning during writing time, Daniel tugged at my sleeve again. "Miss Garner?" he whispered. I told them what I said. We practiced, and they listened. I nodded. "They said they didn't know. It made me feel that way," he added. "Sometimes they don't," I said, "until you help them see it." That afternoon, I sent a note home with his progress report. Just a few lines about courage and how proud I was of his voice. On my way out of the building, I paused by the bulletin board in the front hall. We'd pinned up artwork from every grade, each drawing different, but together they made something whole. I stood there for a while just watching the colors. It was quiet in that moment. Not empty quiet, just still, like things were finally shifting into place. The year passed in small steps and slow repairs. The old patterns weren't gone, but they no longer controlled every moment. Sunday dinners came and went, sometimes lively, sometimes just quiet. My boundaries stayed steady, and when old habits slipped through, I gently reminded them. Trevor and Sophia settled into parenthood with Simon. I visited on weekends and took him for walks around the block, bundled in a tiny jacket that always slipped over his ears. Sophia and I found a rhythm of our own in the kitchen and backyard moments that felt simple and true. Mom asked more often about my classroom. She wanted to hear about the reading challenges and the art projects, about Lily's progress in math, and Daniel's new confidence in speaking up. Dad sometimes joined the conversation or sat beside me during family lunches, asking questions he'd never asked before. Sometimes he listened with a thoughtful silence that felt new to me. The work of healing wasn't quick or complete. I learned that it's not always about perfect forgiveness or having every wound smoothed over. It was more about telling the truth and letting others do the same. Trevor and I grew closer than we'd ever been as children. Our bond wasn't built on what we used to share, but on what we understood now about each other. He kept making room for my voice at every table. He made sure my work and choices were valued in every family conversation. What surprised me most was how much lighter I felt without the old ache of chasing someone else's definition of worth. I still love teaching. I still woke up early to rewrite lesson plans and cut construction paper for class, but now I did it without wondering if it was enough for someone else. One Friday in spring, Mom came to see a school play. She watched from the second row as my students performed lines. They'd written themselves afterward. She hugged me in the hallway and whispered, "I'm proud of you." Her voice steady and clear that evening. I sat with Ryan on our porch as the sun went down, thinking about how far I'd come. The road to justice in a family isn't paved in grand gestures, but in small moments of respect, honesty, and quiet acceptance. If you've ever felt unseen or less than enough by the people you love most, you're not alone. Sometimes the most powerful justice is simply finding peace in who you are. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched you or made you think about your own journey, I hope you'll share your thoughts or subscribe for more stories like this. Your voice matters here just as much as mine.